There's a new report by the independent Swiss research group Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. And what they found was that Americans not only love using plastic and being incredibly wasteful, they're also smuggling plastics to poorer countries for disposal. So the Los Angeles Times wrote about this, and it's really fascinating to see how this is taking place, right? Because there are supposed to be some international regulations against this, but smugglers are finding a way. So building on a previous investigation by Interpol, the new report maps the web of brokers, middlemen, legitimate recycling companies, and organized crime groups that move millions of tons of discarded plastic from the United States, Europe, and Australia to countries in Southeast Asia and Africa. So there are two things happening. First of all, of course, you need the wasteful countries trying to export their junk, their plastic. So that's part number one. But then you also need some countries that are willing to accept it, right? And in that regard, there are countries that tend to make a little bit of money by accepting the plastics. But in some cases, there's all sorts of tricky stuff taking place where as the plastics are being exported to poorer countries, the country accepting the shipment doesn't even realize until it's too late that they accepted plastic waste, okay? So I'll explain to you how that takes place. The report found that legitimate recycling companies and waste brokers have engaged in fraud, concealing shipments of banned plastic products, among other goods, illegally dumping them, and paying bribes to get past inspectors. Exporters have also mislabeled their cargo so that the plastic scrap incorrectly appears to be in compliance with international agreements, and I'll get to those international agreements in just a second, disguising it from customs officers, right? So the labeling is an issue here, obviously being incredibly deceptive in what's being exported. But there's also other tricky stuff taking place in regard to the routes being used during the exporting process. So even the shipping routes used to move plastic waste around the world are often designed to incorporate multiple stops in different countries so that by the time an illegal shipment arrives at its final destination, it's not even clear where it came from. This makes it difficult for regulators in Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, countries that are making an effort to send back banned plastic scrap, to return them to their origins. And final point before I go to you, Waz, if you look at the United States, of course, the US is an offender, but it turns out that California is the biggest offender. California is especially culpable, writes the Los Angeles Times. Plastic scrap generated in the state accounted for nearly, get this, a third of all US exports to developing countries this year, and is the main source of banned plastic exports to Malaysia. And the reason why is because of the fact that you have the Port of Los Angeles. It's the main US entry point for goods both to and from Asia. And once those shipping containers are empty, they can be refilled with Californians' plastic scrap and sent back across the Pacific Ocean at relatively little cost. So junk. We are producing junk, we are exporting junk, and we're expecting poor countries to shoulder the burden. Waz.
This reminds me of two things. The New York Times put out a video the other day where they said that blue states are actually exacerbating the crises of our times at an accelerated rate, right? When it comes to housing crisis, the sort of wage gap between the highest earners and the lowest, homelessness, like you name it. It's places like California, like Washington State, where the Dems are in the executive. They basically run those state governments. They make all the freaking rules, yet they produce horrible outcomes. And therefore, it's hypocritical when they go with this blue no matter who. And California basically being the capital of tree hugging in America, being the state that is the worst offender of this is the other thing that comes to mind is just like, wow. And also, the country that this waste is going to, I think, man, another thing that it reminds me of as it pertains to the climate crisis is that rich countries know that the countries that are gonna be most afflicted by it first are the third world, are poor countries. And they're basically like, we'll kick the can and figure out how to keep them damn migrants out later. Like, it's not gonna really come to kill us first. And so we don't really have to care or treat it like a crisis. And so, that's just a long way of saying we're doomed.
Right, I mean, look, I don't know if you saw the exchange that Abby Martin had with Nancy Pelosi during this climate summit, but she asked such a great question, which is, hey, look, the Pentagon is one of the top contributors to the climate crisis. And so you have supported increasing the defense budget over and over and over again. Why aren't we discussing the impact that the Defense Department has on the climate issue? And of course, Nancy Pelosi didn't really have much of an answer except to say, well, the Pentagon sees climate change as a national security risk, and it certainly is a national security risk when the climate crisis is going to and is already leading to a migrant crisis. And so it was her way of saying, no, I mean, we need to fund the Defense Department so when the migrants come, we got to find a way to fend them off. I mean, she was pretty transparent about it. It was incredible.
Yeah, again, the crisis is not that the planet is going to be heating up at a ridiculously accelerated rate. The crisis is that these nasty black and brown people, disgusting, Anna. These people will come to our shores and just muck up the works. I already need a shower. I don't know about you, Anna.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.